me. So, if you have been following my channel for a while, you may have seen this video, or maybe it's popped up in your feed. This video right here is to replace that video right there. You see, I used the wrong term to describe this type of processing in that video. It's called dynamic EQ, by the way. I've also refined my method since then. So this video is going bye-bye, which is gonna hurt in terms of analytics, but gotta tidy this place up a bit. In this video, I'll show you how to make a dynamic EQ combinator using the legacy Reason devices and why you'd want to use it. If you want to learn more about signal flow in Reason, including audio routing, how to modulate parameters using control voltage or CV, and some practical examples of dynamic EQ in action, this video is for you. Let's get started. Oh, before we get started, if you've watched a few of my videos and found them helpful, you could help me out by subscribing for more music production goodies. Thank you. Okay, so here we are in Reason, and I have this vocal. That's it. So let's say I wanted to process this with dynamic EQ, and I'll tell you why you might want to as we go on, but we need to make a combinator to achieve that. So let's start. I held shift so that didn't auto route, and I always start my combinators the same way with a line mixer and a spider audio. So the next thing we're going to need is an EQ of some sort, right? We're making a dynamic EQ. I'm going to use the M-class equalizer for two reasons. Reason one, because it's visual. It has like this, visualizer thing. And then two, if you're on an older version of Reason, you definitely have this. So we're going to use that. So let's get this all routed in. So we're going to run this combinator as an insert. And then we need to hook these things to the combinator. So the combinator, the EQ is our main processor. It's our only processor. So we're going to run the combinator to the EQ, and then we're going to run the EQ back through the combinator, but through the mixer, because we're probably going to need it. Spoiler alert, we're probably going to need this spider audio merger and splitter as well, but I just want to go step by step so that you can keep up. So now we have the signal running through the combinator, which is running through the EQ. That's all that's happening, and back. So you can hear that EQ things are happening. So our goal here is to get one of these EQ bands and have this gain dial move dynamically based on what the incoming signal is. So that's what dynamic EQ is all about. It's listening to the signal, and then you can pick a frequency and then pick a threshold and dynamically have this control a certain frequency. So that's what we want to have happen. So how do we get this to move dynamically? Well, usually when you use that word dynamics, you're talking about compression of some sort. So we can add a compressor to this setup, but we need the compressor to be able to hear the main signal. So we need to do some routing here. So instead of making the main signal go directly to the EQ, let's split it. So let's go into the EQ, and it's also going to the compressor. Okay, that's pretty good. So now let's see what happens when we hit play. And as you can see, we're getting gain reduction, but nothing's happening here yet. So how do we get this gain reduction to control this parameter here? Well, there is a CV out for the gain reduction. So we can send that gain reduction as a signal somewhere, but we can't plug it directly to the M class, which would be nice, but we can, and I did some trial and error to figure out which is the best modulator. And the pitch bend wheel is a pretty good one. And the reason for that, so I just hooked that CV cable right up to the pitch bend wheel on the combinator. And the reason for that is because the pitch wheel wants to go back to neutral. So that's kind of handy for our purposes. So I'm going to actually delete all these knobs. I like to do that because it makes it easier later. You'll see why. And I also like to pick the color right off the bat because I need to know if I'm going to want dark text or not. You don't want to have to change it on each thing. It's easier to make it happen on the first one, and then all the ones you add, well, you'll see. So I need to tell the combinator that the pitch wheel controls parametric 1's gain. That's our next goal. So in order to do that, we select the EQ, add the pitch bend wheel as a source, and then target the parametric 1 gain. Okay, let's see what happens when we press play. Looks like we're getting expansion instead of compression. And the reason for that, or at least the way I have it kind of in my head, it's like the pitch bend CV jack is asking the gain reduction CV jack, how much compression are we talking? And then the gain reduction jack is saying, oh, like 20% or 10%. And then you see how that's kind of a positive number. So we need a way to invert that. So on the Combinator 2, you can actually just invert them like that. But I'm going to show you another way just in case you are on the Combinator 1 or also just so you can learn a little more. So we're going to use a CV merger and splitter device. Both of these devices are the same. There's the merge side where many things become one thing, and then there's the split side where one thing becomes many things. Same over here. Many things become one thing, and then one thing becomes many things. But there's a special little jack here, the invert jack. So let's use that. Invert the gain reduction. Oop, did that wrong. Wanted to put it on the split. Invert the gain reduction signal so that now when we hit play, all right, we're already pretty much off and running on a dynamic EQ. So let's now populate this combinator a bit with some of the parameters that we're going to need to control so that we don't have to like open the device, to control it. So we're going to need to control the frequency, so that we can sweep around for whatever we want to attenuate, the Q, and then we need to control these compressor parameters. Sorry, struggled there. We need to control these compressor parameters as well. So the input gain, the threshold, the ratio, the attack, and the release. So that's 7 knobs we need to make. So, and you'll see, oh, that's actually the one I wanted. So that worked out. Usually it would be on something else, but I actually was messing around with this earlier. But dark gray big is the one we want. And now every time I make one, it'll be the same. 5, 6, 7. So that's why I got rid of the knobs in the beginning, so I don't have to change them individually into the one I want. So let's spread these out a little bit. Just a little bit. And then we can use this function, space horizontally. That's nice and spacious. And are they all aligned horizontally? Let's make sure. Cool. So let's start routing some stuff. I'll close these so you can kind of see both the knobs and the parameters down here. So we want control 1 to go to frequency. Let's exit out of the configure mode. So we have the EQ selected. Control 1 is targeting the parametric 1 frequency. So now when I turn this turns down here. Cool. So I'll name that freak. And then we need to control the Q. So control 2, targeting parametric 1 Q. So now when I move that, this moves down here. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. Q. And then the next all the rest of the controls are coming from the compressor. So we'll just do this really quick. Let's minimize that so you can see. So we'll add control 3, control 4, control 5, control 6, control 7, and target input gain, the threshold, the ratio, the attack, and the release. And then I'll name these really quickly. Cool. Now we have all these named and rotated. Let's just double check them. Oh, there's a little construction going on outside in case you hear it. Sorry about that. Not really much I can do. But yeah, hope it's not too annoying. So anyway, input gain moves. You're just looking down here and we're going to go one by one. Input gain moves that. Threshold moves that. Ratio moves ratio. Attack moves attack. Release moves release. Okay, so let's go for an example here. So, oh, you know what else we need? We need the ability to A/B this by turning this on and off, right? So that we can hear with the dynamic EQ, without the dynamic EQ. So let's make a switch. We actually do want that style, but we want the red one. Small red, looks good to me. Exit out of here, and we need to select the EQ, and we're going to add switch 1 to parametric 1 enable. So lights on, both lights are on. Lights off, both lights are off. Perfect. So enable will be the label for that one. So let's listen to the signal again and see what we want to get rid of. So there's like a lot of sibilance in this signal that I would want to get rid of, which is interesting because normally you might reach for a de-esser for that. And a good way of thinking about dynamic EQ is that a de-esser is a dynamic EQ, right? It has a narrower band because it kind of focuses on the high end of the spectrum, but it's got a detection circuit and it's listening to the input amplitude, and then you set a threshold, and when it reaches above that threshold, it pushes down. Same. This is that and more. So let's enable this, find the frequency we don't like, and attenuate it. I'll hit it hard just so you can hear it. Whoops. So that's hitting it hard, and we'll go before and after. Oops, before and then after. Of course, that's ridiculous, but you get the idea. And, typically it depends on the scenario, but the cool thing about dynamics in general and dynamic EQ is that when you're not hitting above the threshold, you should have a flat, it should bounce back basically in time so that you don't have to have a static EQ curve like this. Let's say we had like the same thing. We're like, oh, let's get rid of those S's. We'd like make a static curve, and then the whole signal's muffled with that curve the whole time instead of just when it needs to be. So that's why you'd want to use that. Another example of that would be like maybe an acoustic guitar, and every once in a while he has that extra scratchy noise or that extra whatever it is. You can isolate it, and then when it gets to an annoying level, push down on it, and then leave the rest of leave the signal alone for the rest of the performance. So that's the advantage. So, and it does it, in an automagic kind of way. Of course, you can always go in and automate things all crazy, but that's a lot. So, yeah. So we're off and running. But when I think about it, and I think about like maybe Pro Q3 or other dynamic EQs, they typically have a way for you to solo the band that you can hit a button and solo and sweep and find the thing that's annoying. I like that functionality. And then also the detection circuit is listening to the band that you've selected, not the whole signal. As we have it set up now, we're sending the whole signal to the compressor, which could throw it off a little bit depending on how much, energy is going on in other places. So let's see if we can get closer to the Pro Q3 or one of those type processors by first adding a bandpass filter before the compressor. So I'm going to reach for the Thor. In case you don't know, you can actually run audio through the Thor, and it will go through this filter here. So we're going to turn this filter on as a state variable filter. I really hope the noise outside isn't bothering you, because boy, do I hear it. I'm going to turn this into a state variable filter and a bandpass filter. So we also need to loop it in. So we're putting it to be before the compressor. It's going to influence the sounds that the compressor hears. Why do you have to do yard work right now? Why? So we're going to take that split that was going directly to the compressor's input. We're going to make it go to the input of the Thor and then output the Thor to the compressor. We also need to tell the mod matrix to route audio through the filter. So let's do that. Where are you? Audio input. There you are. Audio input 1 and audio input 2. Going to filter 3 left in and filter 3 right in. And at 100%. So now we're running the signal through the Thor, but we need to somehow tie these frequency parameters together. So in order to do that, we can go to the Thor. We'll take this key tracking thing off. Go to the Thor and tell it to use this frequency knob to control the filter 3 frequency in the Thor. So I'm going to put this knob onto my MIDI keyboard so that I can move it and we can kind of track its movement. So this is moving when I move my MIDI keyboard. This is moving when I move my MIDI keyboard. And also this is moving when I move my MIDI keyboard. So we're good. So as we sweep around, well, actually, let's see. Okay, the top frequency for the EQ is 20 kilohertz. The top frequency for the filter is 21.6. Okay, it's close. Bottom frequency 39.1 hertz and the bottom frequency 39.4, super negligible. But let's get this top area to be closer to each other. So if we take the filter 3 frequency and take the max down by 1 tick, that should do it. So now the top is 20K here and the top is 20.6K here. Perfect. I mean, not perfect, but as close as we're going to get. So now as we sweep around on the EQ, we're sweeping around on the EQ. I hit the emphasis on the wrong syllable. As we hit the EQ frequency, this moves with it and it's sweeping around with a bandpass filter. So the compressor is only hearing those frequencies. So, okay, that's nice. The other thing I mentioned about other dynamic EQs is that you can solo a band, right? So let's get that functionality going too. If we take the compressor's output and put it on a line mixer, on another channel on the line mixer, and then mute that channel so you don't hear it until you solo it, then we can make a button that solos it. So let's do that. Make a switch. Let's make it a green one. And we will take the line mixer, add switch 2, and target channel 2 solo. Perfect. Let's configure these and move this around a little bit, just so it looks a little more aesthetically pleasing. And we will call this in solo band. Excellent. So let's try this thing out. I got my frequency slider here on my MIDI controller, and it's controlling this. So I'm gonna solo, and I have the EQ enabled, or the band 1 on the EQ enabled. So let's see what happens when we sweep around. Nice. Let me check one thing. Yeah, we did turn the drive up just a little bit. That's just to get the level to match when you unsolo, or to not be way out when you unsolo. So let's do this. Let's find the frequency, the sibilance stuff that we were trying to get rid of. Let's listen for it now and work on it. So now you can just hear it instead of like kind of search around for it. Then we can unsolo that band, and then and attenuate it. So yeah, we just made a single band dynamic EQ with all the fixins. There is one more thing I wanted to show you though, one more situation that you might find yourself in where this setup would be helpful. Let me just minimize all this mess, but I'll open the compressor. I have a channel here with some kicks on it. Let's imagine now instead of a vocal, this is, I don't know, a bass or something like that. Something you'd want to duck against the kick, but not in that EDM kind of way where you're ducking the whole signal, that pumping kind of way, but maybe in a transparent way where you just want to carve the frequency out where the kick lives and have whatever signal you want move out of the way when whatever other signal you want acts. In this case, it's a kick and a vocal, but you get it. It doesn't have to be those things, is really my point. So in order to achieve that, you take a signal from whatever you would like, put the combinator on whatever you would like to move out of the way, and then take the thing that you want to stay prominent and plug it into the sidechain input of the compressor. So now the compressor, instead of listening to its audio input, is listening to the sidechain input. That's how sidechain works. So its gain reduction will tell this knob to move out of the way when it hears things come through the sidechain. So now you can see that it ducks with the kicks. So you can probably imagine all the ways that is handy, and it's more transparent than ducking the whole signal in that kind of EDM pumping kind of way. So yeah, and there you have it. A single band dynamic EQ for you. I'll make this available. I'll pack all this up and make it available on my website in the download section. If you want to just head over there and grab it, you can. There was another EQ band unused in our setup. What's to stop us from making a dual band dynamic EQ for even more options? Well, with the Combinator 2 and its ability to grow and accommodate more knobs, absolutely nothing. The routing is a little bit tricky though, because you will need a second modulation source so that the bands can react independently. But I don't want to make this video too long. So if you want to see an extended cut of this video where I walk you through how to make a dual band dynamic EQ, I'll post it on my Patreon. You can support this channel for as little as $5 and you'll get the extended cut of this video, a 2-hour video of me making Maelstrom patches, and more extended content as my videos come out. You can also watch the videos that I post here on YouTube, commercial free over there on Patreon, and there's other perks. Speaking of my Patreon, big shout out to D Leggett for becoming a 2nd tier patron. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. If you want a shout out in my videos, you can pledge from the 2nd tier and above, and I'll give you a special mention at the end of my videos going forward. If you made it this far, hit the thumbs up. If you're a real one, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I love you.